Right. Welcome to the Mental Health 101 training for Passaic County Schools. My name is Rachel. I work for the Lindsey Meyer Teen Institute. That is a program of partners in prevention. We are a statewide organization that does youth leadership training, drug prevention, and so much more. Today, we're just going to talk about mental health. A lot of you are creating these video PSAs for the Passaic County Teen Summit, and we thought it might be a little bit to your benefit to learn a little bit more about mental health. What are the resources and what can you use to enhance your video PSA? So let's just jump in. What is mental health? That's the big question. We all kind of have our own definitions, but I want to break down health or wellness into a couple components. So you may have heard of or seen a variation of a wellness wheel. You can see there's a bunch of different ones on here, very different things on here, you know, everything from cultural, environmental, spiritual, to intellectual and physical, financial. There's so many different components of what makes up our health and our wellness as individuals. To break down a few, we've got our physical wellness, right? Are we exercising? Are we eating? Are we sleeping? How's our body doing? Our environmental. So that's taking care of the global environment, but also your personal surroundings, right? Because we know that affects how we feel and how we live. Our emotional wellness. So understanding, but also being able to deal with and handle your emotions. And that's just not the happy emotions, it's the positive and the negative. Because when you can understand and deal with them, you can be in control of everything that comes with that. So your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors. Our social wellness. So do you have people in your life that can give you support? Can they give you guidance when you're stressed, when you need a little bit of help? It could be a family network, it could be your friends, whoever that is. Do you have that social component to your wellness wheel? Financial wellness. So this one's kind of interesting. A lot of people don't think about this when it comes to our health, but you know, are we taking the steps to live within our financial means and planning for our future finances? But also, you know, if we don't have the means, can we get the help we need, right? Maybe we don't have money for mental health services or to see a doctor or something like that. And when you don't have that money, that's just going to add more stress to your life. So financial wellness definitely plays a part in our overall health. And then intellectual wellness. Just making sure that you're still stimulating, you know, your brain. You're still growing and learning no matter what age you are. So like I said, there's a whole lot of these in the wellness wheels. I didn't touch on all of them. You can kind of see in here, there's so many ones. But these are just a few that I think come together to help make up our mental health. So this definition is from mentalhealth.gov, a great website for you to check out if you're looking for quotes or statistics for your video PSAs. But I'll just read this to you. It says, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Okay, so it affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. So it's a lot. It's more than just how we're feeling in our heads, right? It can be how we feel physically. It's how we're going to interact with other people. It's how we're going to make decisions. Our mental health affects so much of who we are, but it affects so much of how we interact with others too. So basically, we all have mental health. Every single person watching this webinar, every single person not watching this webinar has mental health. That's just comes with being a human. Some days are really good, some days might not be good, but we all have mental health. And there's a lot of factors that contribute to our mental health state, right? So it's our day-to-day life. Maybe we're feeling really good because we just got our prom gear and we're ready to go, or maybe we are stressed out to the max. There's a chemistry test tomorrow. I haven't remembered my valence electrons. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm freaking out. So our day-to-day life might impact our mental health. Our brain chemistry also plays a role in our mental health, right? So some people might just be born predisposed to developing certain mental health issues. And that's okay. That's what's going on in our brain. It's all chemicals up there. And that really might affect things. Our socioeconomic status, right? I've said that already. So if we don't have the money for services, or if we're stressed out because we don't have money, that is going to contribute to our mental state. Our gender, our sexuality, basically everything, right? The way that people see us and how we understand that contributes to our mental health state. The last thing about this is I want to say it's on a spectrum. I kind of said that earlier, right? Sometimes you have your really good days, sometimes you have your not so good days, and then there's everything in between. So let's dig into that spectrum here. This is a pretty interesting continuum that I found online. You can see the link in the bottom there. And it considers our spectrum from healthy to ill. I don't love the word ill, maybe unhealthy or unwell, but you can kind of see here how it breaks down. So in our green, all the way to the left, we've got our health. That's your normal functioning every day, right? It's you're just going along. You're great. You're doing you. Something might trigger you, upset you, set something off, and you might go into that reacting phase. So this is where we've got common and reversible distress. Common and reversible are the key words there. So maybe you're feeling impatient or nervous, or you've got trouble sleeping, any of the things listed out here below. But like I said, common and reversible are the key words here. Stress is normal. We all experience stress. So let's go back to that scenario of that big chemistry test coming up. After it's over and you find out what you got, you might feel relief and you might go back to that green phase, that healthy phase. But you could also go the other way to injured is what they call it here. So that's when we've got some significant impairment. So we might be angry or anxious, but it's lingering, right? It's not just here for a little bit. It's staying with us, and we feel different than we usually do. And then if you go one step further to the red, that's the unwell side of this, and that's the clinical disorders and severe, persistent functional impairments. So that's when you've got your diagnosis mostly. There's depressed moods, high levels of anxiety, constant fatigue, really extreme signs and symptoms over at this end. One thing I will point out, you see at the bottom, the two white shapes. So one says needing self-care and social support on the healthy and reacting side. So that's saying, maybe through different self-care practices and through social support, we'll be able to find the sources we need. But on the other side here, it says needing professional self-care and support. And that's important to note. Sometimes we need professional help, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with seeking that out. Services are there. We're going to, towards the end of this webinar, check out some more resources and see what we have available to us should we need professional help. So I want you to take a second and just think about this. What are the first words that come to your head when you think about mental health? Think about that for a second. Were those words that you thought of positive or negative? More times than not, what comes up as negative words. And that's our stigma is what we call that, right? It's the stereotyping, all the negative things that people think are related to mental health, but they're not. Stigma is this cluster of negative attitudes and beliefs that motivate the general public to fear, reject, avoid, and discriminate against people with mental illnesses. It's the use of these negative labels to identify a person living with mental illness. Stigma is a barrier for a lot of people. What I mean by that is, there's fear that results from this discrimination, and people don't want to or might not feel comfortable, saying what's going on in their lives or seeking out help. So one of the things that we are trying to do through this program and through the video PSAs is to stomp out stigma and you know, let people know that they can get the help that they need. There won't be judgment. We're going to be supportive as a group and a community. So this is just another thing to think about as you're trying to figure out what you want to say with your video PSA or what you want to do to help promote positive mental health. So yeah, stigma is definitely a big barrier. Now, stigma is such a big barrier, but it's interesting when we look at the numbers because here you go. Quite a few people ages 13 to 18 have different mental health disorders. So this breaks it down by prevalence, basically how often it's happening, and how severe the impact is. So the DSM, which is the huge medical book that's used to diagnose people, has different impacts. So it might be mild, moderate, or severe. So this is with severe impact. You'll see substance use disorder does not have a number for that. That's because substance use disorder is not qualified that way. There's no, it's just substance use disorder. There's no mild, moderate, or severe. So let's see, anxiety disorders, 31.9% of adolescents experience an anxiety disorder. It could be, you know, generalized anxiety disorder, PTSD, anything like that that's falling in that anxiety category. Our behavior disorders, 19.1%. Those are, you know, ADHD, eating disorders, things like that that are affecting our behaviors and how we're acting. We have our mood disorders, that's at 14.3%. Mood disorders, you know, we've got depression, bipolar disorder, things that are affecting our feelings in that way. And then substance use disorders is at 11.4%. That could be anything. That could be alcoholism, you know, opioid abuse, narcotics, any type of substance use. So one thing I do want to point out on this is that the 22.2, the overall prevalence with severe impact, that doesn't add up. 8.3 plus 9.6 plus 11.2 is not 22. And why is that? So this takes into account the fact that people can have more than one mental health issue going on at the same time. So that's why that doesn't add up. It might be the same people in both categories. And we call that co-occurring or comorbidity when things are happening at the same time like that. So these are the numbers for this. But now we know that, but I want to know, what does mental health actually look like? So it's broken down into signs and into symptoms. Signs, that's what we can see, right? It's our street signs. We see them. It's the temperature, somebody's color, things like that. Symptoms are what's felt internally. We might not be able to see them all the time. So that could be, you know, their pain or their fatigue. We've broken these down into 3 different categories. We've got physical, emotional, and behavioral. And that's just because overlap exists in different diagnoses. So I just want to show you different signs to be on the lookout for, not how to diagnose anybody, because we are not doctors. We cannot diagnose anybody, but we can recognize signs and see if our peers or anybody, you know, is looking for help or resources. And I will say again, so recognizing these signs in yourself or a friend doesn't automatically mean there's a mental illness or injury. But on the other hand, just because you don't see them doesn't mean that everything's fine. So just be aware of that as we're going through. So we're going to go through by category. So first one is physical. So there's a couple of different things here. Our cardiovascular, so that's our heart, right? It could be a pounding heart, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, blushing, gastrointestinal, so what's going on with our stomach pains, nausea, all of that great stuff. Respiratory, so are we breathing really fast or are we out of breath? Neurological, dizziness, headaches, sweating, tingling, numbness, and then musculoskeletal, so those aches and pains, tremors, you know, when your foot is just shaking and you can't stop, the inability to relax. So these are just a couple of different signs and symptoms that could be related with a bunch of different things, right? Anxiety, different stress, anything like that. But you got to remember that while it could be related to mental health, it could also be a stomach bug. So that's why it's important to understand the full picture of what's going on, and checking in with people and not jumping to conclusions, trying to talk with them first. More physical stuff, pattern adjustments. So if somebody is just totally changed the way they act, so if they're overeating or if they're not eating at all, if they're sleeping all the time or they're never sleeping, things like that, just, a total shift in what they usually do. And then our appearance as well, changes in hygiene, our eyes, bloodshot, weight gain, maybe weight loss. So dramatic shifts here. And again, remember, this could be mental health, or this could be, just typically developing as a teen or an adolescent. So let's jump into emotional now. It's what a lot of people think of when they think of mental health. But like I said, it's more than just the emotions. It's physical too, and it's so much more. So depressed moods, right? Being upset, being sad, or mood swings, going from being on top of the world to crying in 2 seconds. Unrealistic or excessive anxiety or guilt. Okay. Excessive irritability or anger, acting out, picking fights, yelling, screaming, anything that falls into that category. Lack of inhibition, right? Just not thinking about the decisions we're making. This one's big too, a lack of emotion or emotional response. So all the ones above are kind of saying people are very emotional, right? But this is lack of emotion. So this is not showing you anything, right? It's our blank face, our blank stare. You tell them something really exciting and they just say, okay. Tell them something really upsetting and they just say, okay. No response. That's a pretty big sign. Hopelessness or helplessness, right? Feeling that depression, like there's nothing out there. Oversensitivity to comments, and low self-esteem as well. So these are some signs to look out for. You can kind of see things will manifest differently for everybody, right? So like I said, that lack of emotion versus a lot of emotion. One example to consider here is depression. When people think of depression, they kind of have the stereotypical picture of, somebody's crying, they're not showering, they're lying in bed all day, they're sleeping. But depression could look a lot of different ways, right? Depression could be somebody smiling, they're totally fine at school, and they put on a mask, and then they get home and they act differently. Depression could be somebody who's screaming at everybody and picking fights and really aggressive. That can also be depression. So things look differently for everybody. I just want us to know that as we kind of explore these signs and symptoms. So we've got more emotional ones. These are kind of thoughts. So self-criticism, right? Judging ourselves, being hard on ourselves, pessimism, difficulty making decisions, difficulty concentrating and remembering as well. Racing thoughts, right? Not being able to calm ourselves down. Our brain just keeps running and running and running. Altered sense of self. So the tendency to believe that others see one in a negative light. Everybody's looking at me, everybody's judging me, feeling really, really self-conscious and differently about ourselves. Delusions or hallucinations. So that's either seeing things that aren't there or thinking things that are not true. Suspiciousness, and also thoughts of death and suicide. Definitely a big red flag here. So now here's the last category of signs and symptoms. We've got our behavioral signs and symptoms. So what you might actually see somebody doing. This could be crying, could be withdrawal from others, right? Isolating yourself, inability to manage responsibilities, excuse me, not being interested in your personal appearance, right? Not being motivated, moving slow, using drugs and alcohol, that's a big one. If somebody's, feeling upset, feeling stressed, feeling whatever they're feeling, they might reach for drugs or alcohol. as a way to feel something or a way to relieve something, but that's not the case. It doesn't do that. It just helps to create more problems. Changes in energy level, different behaviors, obsessive compulsive behavior. So the feeling like I need to do this, I need to do that, hitting the light switch 18 times, it could be anything. Avoiding things, phobic behaviors, not wanting to leave, and then non-suicidal self-injurious behavior. By that, you might hear that referred to in some different ways. Basically, it's harming yourself without the intent to kill oneself. So that could be cutting, it could be burning, hair ripping. But what's really important is that what people may do different things, and they might do it for different reasons. If somebody is self-injuring, that's always to be taken seriously. And we should try and help to get them to the resources that they need, because it's a very serious behavior. So basically, to sum this up, mental health can affect every part of our lives. It can be physical, our behaviors, our feelings, and emotional shifts can be a warning sign that someone might be struggling or need assistance, right? Those drastic changes, drastic swings. Essentially, if your spidey sense tingles, if you feel like something is wrong in your gut or you think somebody needs some help, do something, whether that's talking to a teacher or checking in with your friend. If that spidey sense tingles, please feel empowered to do something and reach out. So how do I maintain good mental health? Okay, we've talked about our signs and our symptoms and what it is, but how do I make sure that I'm feeling good and I'm on top of things for myself? Well, we have these two different things in our circle of health, right? Our risk factors, which increase the probability that someone will develop a mental health disorder. So risk factors are not great for us. It's abuse, it could be trauma, chemical imbalance, ongoing stress, anxiety, side effects of medication, brain injury. But then we've also got these really good things, protective factors. So they are the complete opposite of risk factors. It could be healthy practices, social support, high self-esteem, avoiding drugs. I've got some more here. Feeling like you're in control of your life. For some people, spirituality, avoiding alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. Going to school regularly and having good academic performance. Having a good social support system. So having those friends and family, peers in your life who are going to help you out. Economic security, constructive recreation, right? So are you doing sports or theater or band or in some sort of community like that? Community bonding, and feeling close to an adult. These protective factors help us out. So we really want to build them up. So the first thing on there was healthy practices. Coping mechanisms can be healthy practices. It could also be unhealthy too. It depends on what you're doing. So the coping mechanism is how we're going to handle that stress that comes in our life, how we're going to handle the issues when they come up. So unhealthy things would be smoking or binge drinking, drug use, isolating yourself, spending a lot of money. Yes, people say retail therapy and they laugh, but that could be really bad for us. Avoiding the problem altogether, that's not going to help anything. It's just going to make it bigger. Sleeping all day, disordered eating, whether that's overeating or undereating, all those things are unhealthy for us. If you look at the left, we've got our healthy coping mechanisms. So I have a couple here, but I'm going to challenge you later to think of some for yourself. So it could be exercising or yoga, right? Getting your body moving, or meditating, working on your breath, helping yourself relax that way. I love giving myself a pep talk, just look in the mirror and tell yourself you're great. Writing in a journal, playing with a pet, or if you don't have a pet, just looking at cute animal memes online. Cleaning, I stress clean. When I am stressed, I clean and it relaxes my mind so much. Coloring or making art or music, anything like that. And asking for help too. All of these are really healthy ways to handle stress or different issues that might come into your life. But you've got to know, if you think back to that spectrum, when we cross the line from self-care and social support to needing professional help. And we're going to go over some more resources in a minute. I do just want to note, so in the unhealthy behaviors, I see a lot of them are smoking, drinking, drugs, things like that. And using alcohol, tobacco, and other drug as a coping mechanism is really destructive. Addiction and mental health disorders often happen together. According to NAMI, which we'll look at their website later, between a third and half of individuals with mental health disorders also struggle with addiction, and vice versa. So it's 9.2 million US adults experienced both mental illness and substance use disorder in 2018. So definitely steer away from those unhealthy and try and find a healthy coping mechanism that works for you. So instead of coping mechanism, you might hear the term self-care sometimes. That's just taking the time for yourself to, you know, like it says, care for yourself. Take care of who you are and you. And self-care can be a lot of different things. I challenge you to, think of something that worked for you. If you Google SelfCare Plan, you'll find a lot of different templates that you could use. This is great for if you're stressed out and you don't know how to calm down, or you're just like bouncing off the walls and you need a little bit of help and guidance. You can look back to what you wrote when you were in a calm state and use this to kind of de-escalate the situation and feel a little bit better. So I definitely challenge you to look up self-care plans. So the last thing we're going to go over are the resources that are available to you. Definitely take advantage of these in your everyday life, also in your video PSAs. So in your school, you've got if you have a SAC in your school or a guidance counselor, they are great. They're going to know exactly where to go to get you assistance or get a friend assistance. Trusted teachers are also good to go to. If there's any adult in your school that you feel comfortable around, you can go to them. They know where to go to get you the help. So club advisors, school nurses, principals, anybody. If you're not in school, you've got your community. It could be a friend or family, right? Your next door neighbor, your aunt, your uncle twice removed, whoever. Maybe a religious leader for some people, a youth group leader. Doctors and health professionals too. If you're feeling, not like yourself when you're at your checkup or you have an appointment for something else, talk to your doctor or your health professional and they'll be able to point you in the right direction too. And we've got coalitions and health organizations. That's LMTI, that's Up in PC, it's your different town councils and anything like that. Your Board of Health, there's plenty of people doing mental health work in the county, and community leaders as well. So these are great online resources for you. I'll just read through them here. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, NEDA, the National Eating Disorder Association, the Trevor Project, that's for LGBTQ plus youth. Self-Abuse Finally Ends, SAFE, another great source. Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, Darkness to Light, a lot of different resources there for everything. If you can't find anything on those websites, we've got some really great national resources on the right here. So NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is really great. I'm going to show you their website real quick. If I can flip over to the website. Okay. Yeah, so this is just NAMI.org, NAMI.org, and you can see we can learn more, so you can learn more about warning signs, different conditions, there's statistics, learn more about treatment. There's so much on this website. Finding support too, that's everything from living with mental health conditions, things for family members, teens, law enforcement, LGBTQ communities, veterans. There's so much on here, and different ways to get involved. But yeah, let's just, if I can work a computer, see what this kind of looks like. There's different video examples on here for you to look at. A whole bunch of stuff, awesome stuff on here. So definitely take the chance to the opportunity to look at that as you're completing your video PSAs, because there's a lot of great stuff on here. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, also awesome, a 24-hour hotline. If anybody, is contemplating suicide or having a mental health crisis or just needs to talk to anybody, it's a great line to call. 1-800-TALK. It's 1-800-8255. If talking is not your thing and that feels a little overwhelming to you, there's also a crisis text line. You just text NAMI, N-A-M-I, to the number 741-741. So definitely utilize those resources. Tell your friends about them. Put them in your video. There's a lot of information on there and a lot of great resources. So the last couple of things are just about supporting your peers, because you are all mental health advocates, right? You are doing the work, you're making this video PSA, you're trying to make a change in your community. So just a couple of tips for you if you are talking to a friend or if you are, seeing somebody struggling. The first thing is listen non-judgmentally. Every single word there is important. It doesn't say give them advice non-judgmentally, it says listen. So just be there with your mouth closed and hear what they have to say. And non-judgmentally is important too. They might say things that you don't agree with. They might say things that make you uncomfortable. And you should acknowledge your limits, right? If you don't feel safe talking to them, or if you don't feel like this is for you to handle, you definitely, that's okay. But when I say non-judgmentally, I mean, don't have a reaction to them. We want to just make sure they feel validated, right? And they feel like this is a safe place for them. And if you need to talk to somebody later, definitely utilize those resources we went over earlier. But just being there and not judging them in their moment and listening. Be genuine, right? Don't try to be something you aren't. Don't try to say something that's not you. Just be yourself and be there and listen to them. Validate their feelings. I kind of said this already, right? Just let them know, hey, you're not alone. Other people might feel similarly, and we just want to make sure that we get you the help you need so you can feel better. Validate them. Don't offer unsolicited advice. Don't tell them you should do this, you should do that. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, I would do this. When this happened to me, I did. It doesn't matter because we're different people, right? So just listen. Don't offer them the advice. It's okay to ask them, hey, would you like my advice? And if they say yes, and you want to give them advice, that's fine. But don't offer unsolicited advice. And then the last 3 things here, offer to explore options for help together. Hey, I've heard of these resources. Do you want to look online together? We can see if there's anything here. Try and help them out that way, because it can be intimidating to go alone. So that's the next step. Go with them to talk to a school counselor. Offer to go with them, right? Do you want me to go with you? Do you need me there as a support? And if they say no, totally fine. If they say yes, be willing to follow through with that. And then check in with them later. Follow up with them. Give them a text the next day. Eat lunch with them the next day at school. That's going to let them know, hey, this person really cares about me. Definitely follow up with them, because it doesn't stop. We don't get better in one day. It can be a process sometimes. So being a good friend and supporting along the way is really important. And lastly, be positive and remind them that there is hope. It might feel like we're at the very, very bottom, but we can build up. We can get back to normal. We can get a new normal. There's hope. They're resilient. Resiliency is adapting well in the face of adversity. It's a flower growing out of cement, It's when we throw a ball down on the ground, it bounces back higher than it went before. That's resiliency. When difficulties are encountered, you're resilient. You thrive, you mature, you learn from the experience. And it's because of that we know that there is a hope for a better tomorrow. So remember that resiliency as you're learning more about mental health, and if you're encountering different situations where you're assisting people or you see different things, there's hope. You're resilient. You are lovable and capable, and you got this. I cannot wait to see your video projects and learn more about all the awesome work you are doing in your schools and communities. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, thanks. Hope you learned something.